podcast, whatever it's called. I don't even know what it's called. It's a show. It's not quite a show. It's not a podcast. It's not a vlog. I'm not here to talk to you about things that you aren't interested in. I don't care about what's necessarily going on in the country because we are dealing with this one issue. And this one issue impacts every single space in our lives. What I'm going to talk to you about is your kids going back to school because that's vitally important. And I just want to read something to you that I looked at one of my children's old schools, which is in Bristol, called Cottam, um, and I thought it was useful to see just exactly what it is that schools are concerned with and why we all should be concerned as parents because it's madness. It's absolute madness. And I just, I can't quite get over where we've come from my education to what's happening with my children's education. And actually, it's a lot worse now than ever. Um, and so while we're waiting for other people, um, how about a little light entertainment?
Charlie says the best time to get your cock out in the ladies' changing room is when the most little girls are around. And if you really want, you can jiggle it around and have the best fun ever.
It's true. It's true. That's great advice. If you want to upset people, if you want to disturb women and children, then wait to get your cock out when the smallest of little girls are available. I think it's the faster ticket to being aroused. And today it's sponsored by this.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Some of you may hate it, as somebody says in the comments, but I don't care. I'm not really doing it for you. I'm doing all of this for me. Anyway, I listened to Sinn Féin today, by the way, outside of a library, talking about the library closure. Who knew that Sinn Féin wanted to defend children reading totally inappropriate books? Who knew? I guess the same people who did absolutely nothing about the Magdalene laundries. I don't want to get political. I'm just saying. I'm going to do a couple of social comments actually, even though I said I wouldn't. A woman posted about being 29, not yet having children, but she's put yet, and what she can enjoy. And I felt that part of that was sort of what the expectation is, and all of her friends and so on, and how she was fine. And I empathize with her. I was totally fine. I was a lot younger than her when I had kids, actually, but I was totally fine with being single and not needing a boyfriend or a husband or children. I was quite happy with that until I met my husband, and then I wasn't. And I think it would be just insane to think that if I'd said before I met my husband, "Oh, I'm quite happy to be single," if people decided that that was some sort of attack on anybody with children who's happily married. It's quite odd. So that's another thing. And then the other thing is this body count stuff going on. Let me just say, men and women are different. Expectations of men and women are different. Absolutely, I don't believe fundamentally anyone with a huge, with vast numbers in their sexual, male or female. I don't believe that that is a ticket to happiness at all. But I'm not so stupid as to think that we do have slightly different standards. And actually, we have slightly different enjoyment factors. I suspect I could interview right now 50 men who've had 10 sexual partners in the last 6 months. And that'd be rather a lot, wouldn't it? So 10 sexual partners in the last 6 months. And those men, I don't necessarily think would have lower self-esteem. They would probably say that the encounters were actually quite enjoyable for them. That their partners, the person they slept with, female, we're talking about straight couples. The females they'd slept with, they probably would have thought had a great time. They probably didn't even care didn't even know. And I would ask the same of women who'd had 10 sexual partners over the last 6 months, and it would be completely different. It just would be completely different. I think the sexual revolution really helped men a lot access more and more women's bodies. I don't necessarily think it was brilliant for women. However, I I think perhaps I have a different idea about what loads of sexual partners might actually, what that number might be. Um, so yeah, there's all this stuff going on. It's really interesting that some people come from one extreme, like all men and women are equal and it's all completely the same. It's not the same. It isn't the same. Um, it just isn't the same for women because most men are frightful when it comes to that. Certainly on a one night stand. I don't know very many women that walk away going, oh my God, that was the best encounter ever. That was the best sexual encounter I've ever had. That man that I met about 3 hours before going to bed with him. Oh my God, he was so considerate. Physically, I just couldn't be in a better place. It's because our bodies are different. And I'm delighted about that. I'd much rather be a woman than a man. You know, look, men can always make it halfway up the stairs, right? No matter what, men can make it halfway up the stairs. They never reach the top of the tower. I'll just be relatively cryptic, but you know, they don't. Look, 4/5 of the world's women will become mothers. I think it's quite silly to pretend that for most women it is inevitable. And it would be equally as stupid to pretend that those women that genuinely don't want children don't go on to live a most perfectly happy, wonderful, satisfied, fulfilled life. Um, all things are true, but it would not be typical because most women actually do want children. I think the idea is that you just trust people when they say they know what they want and you stop asking people to justify it. I've been asked to justify why I had cesareans, why I breastfed, why I stayed at home, da da da. Really, who cares what I did? Does anyone care? As long as we've got the choice to make the choice that we want, that's the most important thing. So, back to school. So, I was reading about Cottam School inclusion, and it says inclusion to support students who may be struggling with low mood, anxiety, self esteem, and other mental health issues. And it goes on anger replacement therapy, mindfulness, managing exam anxiety, art therapy. There's a sensory room for children that have a bit too much. I mean, what? What are we doing? What are we doing to our children as we take them from the outside to the inside, as they are policed much more by adults, as we do things like, you're on a number 5. Tom, if okay, you should be sitting down, things like you should be sat down now. You're on a number 5. Instead of just going, no, sit down. What have we done? This kind of kumbaya approach to parenting and schooling and the freedom of children, this is leading to children being anxious. I couldn't have cared less about much when I was a little girl. Really. Um, Tomboy, I'm just going to imagine that you're not here in good faith because he's saying, helping ADHD kids go into quieter. Nobody's talking about children with special needs. We're talking about schools that talk about mental health. We're talking about schools, and this is what you need to do, people. Your children are going back to school. Have you read their policy on bullying, LGBT inclusion? Do you know what your children are learning this year in sexual education? Are you aware of it? I just listened to a couple of people talking about how at primary school, one of the things this male teacher did is go through all the names of genitals with kids. Like, really? So you have to go to your school's website and you have to look at policies. So it might be often it's equality and inclusion. So I've looked at that, gender identity and LGBT work. So a lot of schools will have that. A lot of schools will have bullying. safeguarding policies. And then you have to look at what does that actually mean? What is bullying and safeguarding? What are we talking about? Are we talking about girls having access to single sex changing rooms? I know at Cotton they have a load of um, unisex toilets with sinks in the middle, so no privacy for girls. It's just this is what you need to do. So you need to go and have a look at your school. You need to search up what are their policies. You need to find out the safeguarding lead. You need to write to the safeguarding lead. You need to ask if your male or female daughter or son, whether your daughter or son has access to single sex spaces, whether or not they'll be covering LGBT, what the school's policies on language. So, for example, at a school nearby here, nearby where I live now, called Clarendon, they talk about using more appropriate language when they think of LGBT. So we know that that means pronouns. We know that that means that sort of thing, and they don't say it because they don't want parents to know that they're going to be forcing your children to use pronouns. So you need to do that first day of term. You are the only person that can advocate for your kids because nobody else loves them like you do. Nobody else cares. A lot of teachers, as we found out, are either super woke or cowards. They don't want to speak up. They don't want to make a name for themselves. I feel the same about counselors, psychotherapists, nurses, doctors. There's all sorts of people that just have no backbone whatsoever and are happy to take your children and lead them to harm and teach them this absolute shit rather than stand up and be principled and stop harming children. So that's what you should be doing. This is my advice. Go and have a conversation on the first day of term. Try and make it the first couple of weeks. Ask about it. Head it up first. Have the conversation before it's about to happen. So have a conversation before you read this prospectus where you know your kid's going to be taught all about gender identity in the following week. Don't think it just because your child is 4 or 5 or 6 years old that it's not infecting them. It is. Ask about the books in the library. Ask if the school, what sort of school policies there are about graphics in the school library that is not biologically or anatomically based. You know, are there stories in the primary school library that talk about fellatio? What is the nature of their sex education? Who will be taking it? What different outside agencies will be invited into your school? So, those sorts of things are things you need to be asking now at the beginning of term, not when it's already happened, not when it's too late to change, but you have a conversation now. You go in, you have that conversation now. I'm going to say something really sexist, and I hate myself for it, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you are in a heterosexual relationship and the man you're with is the father of your children or the stepfather to your children who has a genuine interest, or you get on well with your ex and you can ask him to do it, ask men to do it, especially if you have daughters. For some reason, and I hate it, but they will be listened to more. So, fathers, this is your time to step up. You're always asking what you can do. Well, this is what you can do. You can speak to the school and you can go and have the meeting and you can ask where your daughter's changing and where your daughter's going to the toilet. Is there any chance at all that a boy could use that space without seriously breaking school rules and getting into trouble? That's what you need to ask. It's a damn shame, but that's what you need to ask. You need to ask the question, will my child be in trouble if they don't use somebody's preferred pronouns? You need to read up on the government guidance. There are websites that can help you, Transgender Trend or Safe Schools Alliance. You can go to either one of those and you can get the information that you need about what is actually lawful. But you are the advocate for your child. Your child maybe can't stand up for themselves at school because they will be socially ostracized, but you can stand up for them and you must stand up for them. You absolutely must. You get to leave that room and everybody could hate you and think that you're a troublemaking, whining, terrible person. But you will have asked the right questions and you will put your child in a better position than if you didn't bother to go in at all. And let's face it, If your child is autistic, then that school might get outside agencies in to help with SEN, and before you know it, your child is being led down the garden path that leads into trans. And I just want to, I don't know if any of you are parents of autistic children or whether you have some insight, but I was reading about precocious puberty the other day because somebody was saying some nonsense. And actually, whilst 8 to 12 is the general rule of puberty, it is normal. It is not abnormal. It is not precocious puberty to start your puberty at 7. Um, and did you know this? Now, think about this carefully and what connections you might make. Somebody with an autism diagnosis is likely to go through puberty on average between 9 to 18 months earlier than a child who is not autistic. Now, couple this in. You're a misfit, you don't fit in with people, and then you become your physical body also changes, so you're not the same as anybody else. And puberty at most ages is pretty horrendous. I mean, I was fine because I had an older sister, but imagine you're a girl you're an only child, or you're the oldest girl, or you've got only brothers, and you start getting breasts at 7 years old, and you're already find interaction quite difficult, and then your body changes like nobody else's, and it's difficult and traumatizing because you're so young and it's so difficult to comprehend anyway. Could that maybe be also one of the reasons that children with autism are more likely to be trans? That actually puberty for them is not just traumatic when it happens because it's the same as everybody else, but actually it's because it often happens a lot earlier. And those children are often emotionally immature anyway. So for them, it happens at such a terrible time. I'm just wondering if that also has something to do with it. Why these kids are so vulnerable, because puberty is traumatizing. And puberty a year ahead of everyone else has got to be much, much more traumatizing. And someone put, no, it's a black and white thinking. Of course, we know all that. We know all the rest. We know all the other reasons. We know that they're more vulnerable because they just need to fit in. And we know they're more vulnerable because they have black and white thinking. And we know all of that. I'm just saying, added to this, I think it would be silly to totally ignore the fact that they go through puberty earlier, and early puberty is really, really distressing. Anyway. Right. I am going to bid you farewell. I'm wearing green. It's not necessarily an Ireland thing, but I feel like it could be. Look, if you link on it right now, you get 20% off. 25, you get some money off. I think it's 20%. I can't remember. But you get some money off if you click it right now. Yeah, look. We have to keep talking about stuff, even if the ideas are not necessarily fully formed, which is what I like to do when I'm on with you. But if you can, you have to stand up for your children. You have to. Nobody else will. You have to head off of school. Look, before they book these morons coming in to gaslight your children, if you've dealt with that already and you've said no, and you, as a parent, you've said no, especially you fathers, then that is going to have so much more impact if you have a calm, rational, reasonable debate, chat with school, and take it far. So you take it to the headmaster, then you write to the headmaster, then you write to the governors, and you make sure that everybody is fully aware. Then you join the governors, then you make sure you join the PTA, and you make sure that you busy yourself with that school, no matter what age they are. But obviously, primary school, it's a lot easier to get involved in parent groups. But be known at school. Don't just think that the school has your child's best interests at heart, because it genuinely doesn't. At the moment, it seems to be a totally different purpose to when we went to school. So just be mindful. Anyway, if you can risk teachers loathing you and thinking you're insane, but you'll still stand up for your child anyway, then I promise we will win. If you can come to Dublin on the 16th, and you can stand tall and you can speak up, because Let Women Speak is global. This is not just about local cities. This is about a global network of women, all under the Let Women Speak banner. And why are they under the Let Women Speak banner? Because we are genuinely grassroots. We are not interested in egos. We are not interested in name checking, but Let Women Speak is really the global women's movement of 2023. And we continue to grow and we continue to genuinely make change. There was a program in Australia about detransitioners and about the medicalizing of children. Do you think that would have happened before we went and did Let Women Speak? Do you? Because I don't. I don't think people would be talking about it half as much. So well done to all of you, because when you do things like get yourself one of these t-shirts or go stickering, you contribute to a campaign that is networking globally women to come and actually speak for themselves in public. And then we change the world. That's what happens. We change everything once women can speak. We might just change those women on the day. We might change women online. We might change the conversations in countries, and we certainly do that. So that's what you do when you support this campaign, by being the billboard. Anyway, if you can continue to support this amazing movement, then I promise we will win. And do you know why else we're going to win? Well, because I never lose. I'm telling you, we are bloody global. There is I'm gonna talk to you about what I believe we do here and why we're so important and powerful and have the capacity to absolutely 100% change the world. And I don't just like, we may start with this issue, we may start with single issue, but what we are actually doing with this single issue is we are forging ahead and bringing together a global constituency of women. And once we've done that, who knows what problems we can't solve? Because I think there is a distinct lacking in community, and especially the community of women. And my God, have I been on this sharp end of that? But it's just so wonderful. We really are global. We are far and wide, and yet